Picture this, your teenager is drowning, but instead of thrashing around in the water, they're just sitting quietly in their bedroom. As caregivers, we are literally hardwired to protect our kids, right? But what happens when the distress signals they're sending look exactly like, well, normal teenage behavior? Or worse, what if those signals just look like laziness? Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking the absolutely critical difference between typical adolescent growing pains and a genuine mental health crisis. We're going to use expert clinical data to show you exactly what to look for so you can spot the difference. Okay, let's dive right into this.
This right here is a real text message exchange that was shared over on Reddit. A 19-year-old daughter who was really struggling to just maintain a 2-day-a-week job texted her dad, "I'm crying, I feel like a loser, I want to die." And how was she met? With tough love, with a silent treatment. Naturally, the internet comment section immediately split. Some people called her lazy, telling her to just get her booty up and face reality. But others, especially people who had survived their own mental health crises, saw something terrifyingly familiar in those texts. And that brings us to the ultimate question, doesn't it? Is this just teenage angst, or is it a desperate cry for help? Honestly, it's probably the most agonizing question a parent can face. When your kid shuts down, when their grades completely slip, when they sleep all weekend, are they just being a teenager, or are they begging for a lifeline? We're going to look at the clinical data to help you separate the two. To really understand the massive scale of what we're dealing with, just consider this number. According to the National Institutes of Health, nearly 20% of U.S. kids between the ages of 3 and 17 have a mental, emotional, developmental, or behavioral disorder. That's 1 in 5 kids. So listen, if you feel like something is off with your teen, the statistics say you have every reason to trust your gut. Section 1. Just angst or something more? Defining the baseline. Moving right along to Section 2, behavioral and academic warning signs, when the patterns shift. You know, the hardest part of parenting a teenager is that hormones and brain development just inherently cause mood swings. It's a messy time. But the experts tell us we need to look past that occasional bad day and focus on the deeper patterns. We almost always notice the external changes first, things like a chaotic, messy room, missed homework, or this sudden sense of apathy. It's actually fascinating how easily we mislabel these clinical symptoms. Take a look at this data from Mission Prep regarding undiagnosed ADHD in teens. Check out that first row, chronic disorganization. Lost items, a totally chaotic bedroom. It gets dismissed as mere laziness all the time. In the second row, slipping grades, smart kids getting really inconsistent results. People write it off as a bad attitude or just underachievement. But actually, a teenager who sits at a desk for 2 hours and only produces 10 minutes of work isn't necessarily lazy. They might literally be fighting an invisible battle with executive dysfunction. And that brilliantly illustrates the wider pattern we need to look for. Here are the 5 key signs of undiagnosed ADHD. Notice how they look way less like hyperactively bouncing off the walls and way more like quiet internal struggles. We've got chronic disorganization, trouble focusing on non-preferred tasks, restlessness, which, by the way, can just look like a constantly bouncing leg, impulsive choices, and that heartbreaking gap between high intelligence and slipping grades. The clinicians recommend you track these behaviors over a 2 to 4 week period. Look, a bad week is just life, but a sustained pattern? That's a red flag. This kind of behavior also extends right into their social lives. Here's the key difference between typical and atypical withdrawal. Normal teen behavior, pulling away from mom and dad to hang out more with friends. That is a totally healthy, normal developmental milestone. The clinical warning sign is when a teen withdraws from everyone. We're talking school refusal, quitting activities they used to absolutely love, and just completely isolating themselves. And here's the thing. Isolation feeds conditions like depression. It definitely doesn't fix them. Section 3, emotional shifts and social withdrawal. Retreating inward. When a teen starts to pull away like that, it's kind of our job to figure out what exactly they're hiding from. Often, it's not actually a desire to be alone, but this profound, overwhelming fear of being perceived by others. So the absolute crucial point here is differentiating between normal shyness and a clinical disorder. Normal shyness involves a slow warm-up period, right? A teen might be quiet at first, but the nervousness fades and they eventually enjoy the party. Social anxiety, on the other hand, is an intense, persistent fear of judgment that only escalates. Teens with social anxiety feel like they're constantly performing for this highly critical imaginary audience. It dictates all their choices and leads to some severe avoidance. We also need to be on the lookout for the hidden physiological signs of that anxiety. It's not just all in their head. It is intensely physical. We're talking unexplained stomach aches on Sunday nights or a racing heart before a school presentation. And then there's what clinicians refer to as the autopsy. This is both fascinating and exhausting. After a social event, while a shy teen just kind of moves on, a socially anxious teen will mentally replay that event over and over again, agonizing over any perceived mistakes. They are literally bullying themselves in their own minds.
And the exact same logic applies to mood swings. Normal sadness is temporary and proportional. They failed a test, so they're sad. That makes sense. Clinical depression, though, is persistent. It's this heavy feeling of hopelessness, emptiness, or intense irritability that lasts for more than 2 solid weeks. As Dr. Hilary Powers points out in our sources, a few bad days do not equal mental illness, but a low mood lasting longer than 14 days, that requires professional attention for sure.
Section 4. Recognizing the emergency red flags. When to take immediate action. Okay, up until now we've talked about monitoring patterns, but the clinical sources are incredibly crystal clear that there are certain behaviors where you do not wait, you do not monitor, you just act. And this brings us to self-harm. Cutting, burning, or dangerous, reckless risk-taking is never just a phase. Let me just repeat that based on the clinical guidance because it's that important. It is never a phase. It is a direct sign of profound distress and always, universally, warrants immediate therapeutic support. Then there are the things they actually say. A passing comment like, "Nobody would care if I ran away," or "I wish I wasn't here." It is so incredibly common for parents to just write this off as dark humor or attention-seeking drama. But mental health experts stress that you absolutely must take these indirect statements seriously every single time. Dismissing them, that only makes the teenager feel more invisible. If you see those emergency red flags, you need to act immediately. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is available 24/7. If your child is in imminent danger, you call 988 or you go straight to the emergency room. You completely bypass the tough love approach and you treat it like the medical emergency that it truly is.
Section 5. How to offer meaningful support. Breaking through the silence.
So if your teen is struggling but they aren't in an immediate crisis, how do you bridge that gap? How do you actually get them to open up and talk to you? Cleveland Clinic psychologist Dr. Kristen Eastman offers a brilliant, actionable approach for exactly this. Step 1 is definitely the hardest for us parents. Don't jump to problem solve. When we see our kids struggling, we immediately want to fix it. But step 2 is to just ensure they are heard. Step 3 is using validating phrases. And step 4 is gently asking if they feel they might need some outside help.
Seriously, consider using these exact phrases. "I see this is really hard for you. I notice you've been struggling lately." Notice what isn't in those sentences? There's no judgment. There's no "why are you being so lazy?" It is pure observation and validation. Dr. Eastman notes that parents are consistently surprised by how far a simple, validating phrase goes in disarming a defensive teenager and actually making them receptive to getting help. Let's tie this all back to where we started with that Reddit post. Ignoring the issue, offering the silent treatment, assuming a teenager is just being lazy or entitled, that only deepens their isolation and worsens the crisis. Seeking help means trusting your gut, reaching out to a pediatrician or a therapist, and practicing that active validation we just talked about.
As Dr. Eastman reminds us, we need to destigmatize the idea of mental health treatment. Going to therapy doesn't mean your teen is broken. It definitely doesn't mean they're being punished. It is a completely normal, healthy way to build coping skills for a world that is, frankly, incredibly overwhelming to navigate right now. Which leaves us with one final thought to chew on. If your teen told you they were drowning, would you tell them to swim harder or would you throw them a lifeline? The next time your teenager shuts down, drops their grades, or lashes out, remember that their behavior is a language. It's our job to learn how to translate it. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and we'll see you next time.